Welcome to this afternoon's panel discussion. Today we are looking at mental health for all, greater investment and greater access, which is the overall theme for this year's Mental Health Awareness Month, which is October. Now, the South African Depression and Anxiety Group has estimated that as many as 1 in 5 people will or does suffer from mental illness in their lives. Joining me in conversation is Sihle Maseko, who is a health expert. I'm also joined by Dean Mokobri, who's founder of My Social Life, a platform that teaches children, teachers and parents digital values, which also sort of resembles the work that we do here at Digify Africa with our Elizwe program, which relates to that kind of content that My Social Life deals with. I'm also joined by Zola Hashati, who is a thespian and presenter, and Mahlatsi Vocal, who is a musician. Welcome to our panelists, and thank you for your time. Now, Sihle, I'm going to start with you. As a mental health expert, SEDEC has sort of estimated that around 63% of increase where distress calls in South Africa are concerned. That there's a growth there. I want to ask you then, in your expert view, could you maybe walk us through some of the potential factors that have led to the 63% increase from last year?
Awesome. Welcome to everyone and hello. Definitely, it makes sense to me why there was an increase. So what COVID and 2020 in general has done is it's brought to light things that were always underlying. So when we think about, okay, we were in lockdown and people's jobs were at risk, people were potentially going hungry, there was a lot of uncertainty in the air. People who will then reach out for help are almost realizing that, snap, this thing is not ending. In the beginning, we're all resolute. We all thought it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, So things just got exponentially worse throughout the year. And the things that would, okay, I don't know if his mic is on.
Hi, Q, how are you doing? I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry for that.
Cool. Yeah. So the things that would then contribute to people realizing that they need help, they're not okay, they're in distress, is the fact that they no longer had control.
Yeah.
When we wake up in the morning and we go to work, we feel we're in control. When we earn a salary, we are happy that it allows us to pay for things we need to pay for, to live the life we want.
Yeah.
And then COVID came and said, you might not be able to live for long. You might not be able to control what happens to your family. You may not be sure if your job will come. And now we realize, how do I cope with the fact that I can't control many of the things that made me feel like I was in control?
Yeah.
And that is, something that we always realize in distress. So when things are good, it doesn't mean that our mental health is perfect. It's just that life has so many distractions that are helping us not notice that I'm not really okay. So when we're at home and with the silence of our thoughts, with the realities of our lives, then people start to see that, my life is not on solid ground. In 1 second, my life got complicated.
Yeah.
Even for those who have lots,
Yeah. So Dean, Sihle talks about a shift that has happened, and I know obviously part of that shift meant that our lives had to move online. Now, I would like you to maybe just walk us through, how do we then negotiate between the idea that there's some toxicity that comes with being online a lot, and also how do we then grapple with the fact that also our lives have to be online and the opportunities that come with operating on digital platforms? Could you maybe then just clarify, how do we sort of balance those two out?
Yeah, sorry, my connection was I don't know whether it was my connection or yours, but it broke up a little bit. But I think you were basically saying, how do we marry this kind of marry it with life online and kind of manage to make that work? Is that what you'd asked?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Look, I think it's a really complicated thing, and I think Sihle did a really good job of explaining. I thought it really took all great point. But ultimately, the thing about life online is that we need to understand are engaging in online. What we're doing is we are speaking through screens, and it's difficult to pick up certain types of cues. Yet, normally, if we're talking to somebody physically. So even though I can still see your face, there are certain aspects of other cues that you me, gestures, certain things in your face that I might not necessarily see, even kind of something in the energy, something that's in the room, something that our intuition necessarily pick it up really clearly. Also, often we're doing a lot of communication via devices where we don't even see faces, so we live on social media, and we are essentially trading these statements in these photos to talk about where our lives are. Those photos and those images and that text is not necessarily the reality of where we do find ourselves, anxious or depressed, or we wish we could parents or a hug from them or whatever it is that people are into. And so that's what's made it really, really complicated. We've been forced online. In some privileged schools, and I say that, in terms of independent schools, the kids that do have access to devices, they're online through more than they before. So online more, they are e-learning more, and yet they're not necessarily making these physical connections. They're not able to, which is important, but they're not able to like hang out and share what's happening, the experiences in their lives. So we've got to remember that we've kind of almost stifled connecting points, and that is really important to mind health, particularly when we're feeling uncertain, unsafe, and we're seeing belong in a community. That's what it wants. If we're feeling unsafe or we're feeling like we don't belong in a community, some of our fight-flight response blows up, says, whoa, what's happening here? And I think that's what we need to remember. The problem is when that happens, we go online, and that.
I'm sorry, there's
Did
a
you
lag.
get that? I'm worried about the connection here.
I got that. There was a bit of a lag there for me. I'm going to take it back to Sihle. Now, I want to talk about then, because Dean talks about then migrating online, and obviously there've been talks about therapy sessions going online as well. Do you think that that's because Dean talks about social cues that aren't necessarily being registered when we are communicating via screen? Do you think that's something that could be able to help cope with the current situation in terms of mental health?
So I'll share a little bit of what I had to end up doing. So I currently work in a high school. So I liked when Dean spoke about how we had to move everything online. And as a school counselor, one of the difficult things was how do I support these learners at home while they must online learn online with counseling and things like that. And the truth is you have to find a middle ground. The the widest way we can give people access to mental health is going online. That's just unfortunate that online platforms are so powerful in reaching more people at once, but face-to-face gives people the connection they need. I find that with us trying to do online counseling, it brings to the fore the person's abilities to engage online. So already now the client needs to be used to the idea of I'm speaking to a screen and dealing with deep emotions that now no one can comfort me through. While I think there are those personality types who loved it because at any moment they could be like, I need to talk. So yeah. I think the difficulty will be always where do you find a common ground with someone's preferences. So with my learners, sometimes it would then just be a WhatsApp message and it would be a convo over VN. So I think the younger and more technically savvy someone is, the more you can make them feel like the session is a conversation that they would normally have. But I found that when I had older clients, so people at work or even teachers from other schools, the Zoom conversation didn't work and it had to be a telephonic conversation. Sure. So it it really is uncharted territory. I think a lot of people are trying, and I ended up offering free video sessions for people so that they could at least get some sort of help. But as human beings, we will really struggle to fully buy into the idea that I can only speak to someone online through a screen, because I can still speak to someone face to face. So that's still always a preference, but moving and migrating is not a bad idea, and it's something we all have to grapple with.
Sure. Now, Zola, Sihle mentioned a shift also in the workplace earlier on, and I know the entertainment industry had to sort of try and find ways of making sure that production still happens and production still continues, and that we're able to get whether it's series, whether it's soaps, whether it's movies. And I know that in America there was one TV show particularly that was able to shoot using Zoom, which was very interesting because it was something that was like, I mean, we never thought that TV would look like that. I want to talk about then, how did the lockdown regulations translate into on-set, and were the mechanisms that were put in place to ensure that people are comfortable with the process?
Well, good afternoon. Amazing work. I think with the lockdown, I'd like to call it, planned pregnancy. That's what it was. No one saw it coming. We apparently had it before, but we never saw it coming. No one. So we were all in panic mode. And if I have to use the US as a reference, Mr. Barack Obama would say that there was a COVID place at the White House. And obviously, Mr. Trump didn't believe in that. He said he doesn't know if they were using that book to balance the table somewhere. So I wish we had a manual before. But it's go with the flow. We say only dead fish go with the flow, but we have to go with the flow. It disrupted a lot of productions in a big way, because with Soapy, what we do is we shoot 3 months in advance, and I think it was Sisha who said at the beginning, 2 weeks stay at home quarantine, you'll be okay. 2 weeks became 3, 3 became 4, 4 became 5. Now we are on 200 and something. I stopped counting how many days since the lockdown. So some of the soapies that had shot, and also it exposed a lot of people that haven't shot for 3 months going offline, and you had a lot of reruns and a lot of people that a lot of work that we had planned that was in pre-production couldn't go forward to being in production because now how do you was able to yes. But also with that, the same breath, the US making movies and TV long before we did in South Africa. So we, and many say we've arrived, we haven't, we're still learning, it's in progress. We still need to respect those that came. It's this new generation of Twitter, because that thing that they made it, it stopped being about the talent a long time ago. Now it's about how many followers you have on social media. Big ups to actually did a show on Zoom. I don't know how that would look like. As a child of the theater, I miss the personal, intimate touch, the face-to-face, the immediate from the theater audience after a performance, scenes that we have, because now we had to incorporate why we would be wearing masks on the show, why distancing, why there's no more kissing scenes, more the storyline changed. So it took our lives and it just over. You went from living like into you move out of your fancy townhouse. Gonna pay it because the production has stopped. You took the car back to the car dealership. You're like, yeah, thank you. You doing? Here's your car back to the taxi life. You know, um, it has affected thespians. Not only just the artists, producers, the cable bashers, the tea ladies that work in houses, the drivers, the location scouts, the makeup artists, singers. So now there's no entertainment. There's no theaters. There's no festivals. There's no, everything is just a total shutdown. But because I believe forward. So I'm not gonna speak about myself. I shot in advance. So entertainers from what? TV. I mean, everyone is doing the virtual comic stuff now, the virtual theater, the virtual. We've never done this before. So there's a few things we had to unlearn. There's a few things we are still learning. But I mean, I remember the only time, I mean, even during level 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, do the whole countdown, I was still on the streets, on location, shooting. The only time I stopped shooting was when I actually tested positive for COVID, and I had to quarantine. And now I'm like, wow, it's the longest 14 days of my life. And the first question I asked my doctor was, am I gonna die? He was like, no, just you're young, you've got a good immune system, take care of yourself. So what COVID has taught us is to appreciate the gift of life, appreciate those that are around you. But I also like what Sisha said, that it made us deal and face our demons in the mirror, ourselves. It made us deal with us. Because in the 32 years I've been on God's earth, I now know how it feels to deal with self. This is what people deal with. This is me. This is my attitude during the latitude. This is my mannerism. This is how I behave. So it brought a lot of calm down, breathe, walk easily, laugh hysterically, enjoy every day, live every day like it's your last. And also, we are not in control. If we ever thought we were in control, COVID has taught us we're not in control.
I want to take it to Dean again, just on the digital, again, going back into how we've been operating on the digital spaces. Now, I know that there've been obviously a lot of conversations around, people using social media as a way of, showing off their lives and basically just showing what they have. And I know that Instagram, I think it was last year, they removed the visibility of likes on their pictures. And I know Moseri, who's Instagram's owner, said that they were trying to reduce anxiety and reducing social comparisons. Can you maybe tell me or tell us more about more social media platforms implementing that kind of policy? Oh, I think you've been muted. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, there you go. A lot of the platforms have been trying to pick things up. So specifically, TikTok have put in a number of different new tools. They've got like a family monitoring section, and they're offering better tools in terms of being able to show teens around the security settings. They're actually even them tell that story in the country, which was really interesting. Because, you know, TikTok has got, you know, 800 million up to 1 billion users. They dropped 120 million users in India at the end of August. So they're trying to do whatever they can. But the truth of it is that we've got to remember that as much as they put in certain settings and that they are doing better to some degree, they also have new innovations that are always coming out. So it's really difficult. It's a little bit like playing whack-a-mole. You kind of, you hit the mole as it pops its head up out of the hole, and then something else pops out later. And what we're going to see is we're going to see virtual reality and augmented reality. Those price points of those glasses are coming down. So social media as we know it, I think over the next couple of years is really going to change. And I think it's going to be more experiential, because it is more experiential. Virtual reality is an experience much more than just engaging on a screen. So, you know, they are doing more. YouTube, for example, was fined, I think it was $75 million last September for the violation of kids' privacy. I mean, these are brands that we know. TikTok, YouTube, I mean, Snap's got itself in all sorts of problems. You know, we have kids on Among Us now as the big game. Of course, we've got PUBG, Fortnite. They're all doing more, but the question is it enough? Because the challenge is, and I specifically talk, you know, with regards to people under the age of 18, is that their brains are not emotionally mature. Their prefrontal cortex is not developed and won't develop until mid-20s. So they're quite hot on the button. They're quite impulsive. They're not emotionally mature. And we've given them these beautiful, highly entertaining, highly exciting, dynamic, rapidly evolving devices with all these apps, right? And those apps do shine back a number of different issues. In our program, we say to them, imagine this. This is what a teen has to deal with. They have to understand that the digital identity that they create online is going to be indexed and saved by Google, and via hashtags and accounts. It's also going to be like account tags. It's also going to be indexed and recorded there online on social media. Then they have to worry about things like intimidation, bullying, trolling and flaming. I had a school contact me about this yesterday. They have to worry about privacy. Have they locked up their device carefully enough, or do they even want to? Most people want to keep public accounts to get follows, likes, engagements. Then we worry about cybersecurity, external threats like clickbait, in terms of hacking, identity theft. I have a student that's just lost 1,450 friends. I have another student who's 16 who somebody said, can I buy your 1,000 followers on Twitter for, I can't remember the price, 1,000 or 2,000 rand. She was thinking about doing it, giving her identity away. We think about sexuality online and the way in which the videos that we see kind of make us go, oh yeah, that's kind of acceptable. That's kind of the norm. If we think about sexting videos, of course, until someone betrays our trust and shares that video with somebody else after we've fallen out with them. It's complicated for kids. And what we're seeing is, and this is the thing, is we don't see it because devices are cool. They're amazing. I'm not anti-devices. They're cool. They're amazing. They're learning devices, social devices, movie devices, entertainment devices, music creating devices. These things are insane. The problem is when they go wrong in some of those weird corners, they go wrong badly for kids. And then we see psychological issues. And you can try and get the apps to do as much as possible, but this is why TikTok approached us, is it's difficult to get people to see them and to then go to them. So what we've got to do is we've got to teach them a protection mechanism by educating, by giving them information which they can flag in their brain when somebody approaches them and says, can I buy your followers? Here, why don't you give me a call? Hey, will you send me a photograph of yourself? The flag needs to go up and they need to go, not going to do it, sorry. And I believe it's an intrinsic teaching that needs to happen internally, not a plaster on the top.
Sure. Sisha, I want to talk about access, because Dean talks about now the ramifications that come from some of these, social media platforms that we use, and the toxicity that also, one finds themselves trapped in when using these digital platforms. Could you maybe then talk to us about where South Africa is in terms of access where mental health services are concerned?
Yeah, definitely. So I read up that in terms of just our budget, mental health gets almost the smallest amount of money that goes into health issues in our country. And even there, it's there to take care of those in institutions. But the sheer idea of people's mental health, mental well-being, and how we maintain it, it's not easily accessible. No, it's almost a reality where we see in spaces where kids, for instance, should need or have easy access to help, they find it the hardest. There's a lot of red tape towards being helped if you have a problem. So the toll-free number that SADC has for and for depression and anxiety is a powerful tool, but still requires you to own a device. So that's in and of itself is a limitation. When you go into university spaces, many campuses will have psychological support, but there'll be a long queue for that. If you want to get good quality help, you need medical aid, and in South Africa, the majority of people do not have medical aid. Our hospitals aren't easily equipped with social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists. So all these kind of services are very limited and are available to a minority in our country. For instance, I'm a qualified social worker, but for instance, within the spaces where people like myself work, we aren't able to be placed in schools, for instance, because then there's issues of who's meant to pay the social worker. Must it be the Department of Education or the Department of Social Development? So the reason the school that I'm in could afford me is that it's an independent school. So again, there's issues of privilege, of saying, here's a school that says, I think our kids need help. And then who do we hire? And I guess social workers, the cheaper ones, so maybe they couldn't get a psychologist or something, because probably it would be a lot more money, and people understanding who does what within this mental health world and who would give you the best interventions. I, for instance, believe that every school should have a social worker because we have the advantage of providing therapy, but we understand systems, we understand how to build a community. So I liked, for instance, when Dean was emphasizing the issue of how young people love to create digital lifestyle that is incredibly unrealistic, but it's because you can perform, on online you can perform, give a good face, take the right angle, sound deep, and then you have followers. And I often emphasize to the kids that one of the ways to not make online life being your real life is have a real life that is good. We must share online a life that we're enjoying in real. So that things like trolling, things like people, having many likes doesn't matter, because the people who follow you are your friends. So let's go have real human friends. Let's make real human connections that are online. You're able to share good moments of your life. So I think mental health in South Africa isn't taken serious because of it being mental. It feels like it's not a physical struggle. But when you even just try and unpack what mental health means, it means your emotional, your psychological, and your social well-being. So those three facets fundamentally influence how productive a human you'll ever be, if you want to think about money, or just feeling purposeful, feeling like you are contributing to society. Our suicide rates will always be up because we think mental health is only about is this person crazy, because it's all the psychology, but it's like social well-being. Do you feel like you belong? Emotionally, are you able to identify how you feel? Can you express it? Can it be validated by society? So then social media becomes this tool where you can get responses that in real life you can't easily get, because you aren't getting each of those facets being taken care of. Yeah.
I guess then we can also talk about instant gratification and what social media sort of plays a role where that is concerned. Mahlatsi, in the world of entertainment and music, I'm going to slightly direct now the conversation to Zola and Mahlatsi at this point. We know a lot of artists, your Amy Winehouses who passed away because of mental health, your Whitney Houstons who passed away because of struggling from mental health illnesses. I want you to walk us through then some of the pressures, or at least would you say that being in the public eye does trigger some kind of mental health issues? I'm going to start with you, Mahlatsi. think you've been muted. Can you please unmute him for me, please? There we go.
You hear me now? Okay, great. All right, thank you very much to everyone, and I've heard all the points. Okay, obviously I'll speak from an artist's perspective. I'm a 39-year-old and married. And to be honest with you, our industry in terms of entertainment, music, it's very, very, pressure-like as far as how we travel this road. So I'll speak on my behalf. At some point in 2016, I took about 48 sleeping pills, schedule 0. Of course, I didn't die, but I mean, it was more of a struggle because a lot of things that I was suffering was more to do with my finances. We don't have gigs as we used to have, you know what I mean? So mental health takes quite a lot of strain from us, especially as artists. And to be honest with you, the public expects a lot from us because you can imagine we live a life of restaurants, we live a life of, fancy cars and all this beautiful designer clothes and stuff like that. So there comes a time where all that vanishes. And when it vanishes, people start talking about you, even your family members. They do a meeting for you and say, you know what, you're embarrassing us. There's people that are out there talking about you. Even on social media, you're being attacked a lot of times because they saw you walking to, a spaza shop. So it really took a lot of strain for us, and especially now when it came to lockdown. Lockdown just happened, from nowhere, as Sisha said as well. It happened from nowhere. Nobody prepared for it. We did at some point try to do your little bit of live sessions on live stream, but sometimes it even gives you more pressure again because you're doing a live stream, and when you check your followers that are watching, you're probably being watched by about 5 people. And as opposed to every time when you're performing, there's about 1,000 people on a crowd that are looking at you. But this time around, you're trying to do a social media performance. There's only 5 people. At some point, it's like 10, 20, and then you see them decreasing, and you're about to hit those, like your high notes, whatever. And before you know it, you're left with about one viewer, probably maybe your friend or your family member. So it gets to really, it gets to your head so much that you don't even know who you are anymore. So, and we don't really get to have help and people like Sisha to really advise and uplift us because we normally do obviously the music for the people. You spoke earlier on about the whole you missing in terms of the touching. I think it was the other guy as well. So you get to miss touching people because you can imagine the music that we do. We doing it to touch souls. But the truth about it is that when you do it on the screen, it's not as effective as people are like feeling you, because even the singing itself, you get to have whatever the dynamics of singing, because there's a particular somebody looking at you, there's a particular somebody crying in the crowd. So you're able to vary around your voice as well. So mental health really, really affects us a lot. And there's something that needs to be done, especially when it comes to artists, because we're going to lose a lot of us simply because, there's nobody who really thinks our craft can be looked after when it comes to mental health.
Sure. And you, Zola, on your side, do you think that being in the public eye does trigger some kind of mental health issues? And is the entertainment industry actually, doing something from their side to make sure that artists are taken care of mentally?
Oh, beautiful one from Mahlati. Yeah, nothing but the truth. The answer to both questions are yes and no. Yes. He spoke on a musical side of things. I want to say artist, thespian, theater, actor, presenter side of things, now producer. When you get on stage or or if you audition for a film or a TV drama or a telenovela or bloody blah, you play a different character. Already that shifts your mentality already. But I think let me not exclude the other ballet dancers and musicians. Step on, let me just call it, when you step onto a stage, you transform into an entertainer. You are there to entertain. When the theater curtains open up at 8 o'clock at the markets, Pacific, you entertain, regardless if you're going through a breakup or dog or family member just died, you smile, you show up and you show off. So already that messes up with our mentality, because you're playing a different character, you're playing someone else. So now 20 characters in a month. It drains you. That's why sometimes it's hard for people to get out of character, because some people believing that I'm playing this media mogul who owns a company called New Horizons, and then when they see you in a taxi, they're like, "What are you doing here?" And you're like, "But what happens in the taxi? It's a mode of transport. You have to do the work that they know you for." So it does affect artists, but also, as I said, as an entertainer, we entertain. But the question is, who entertains the entertainer?
Exactly.
When the lights go down, when the speakers and the sound mixer is off and the curtains go down and you drive alone, most artists live a sad life, because people expect the entertainer. When they see you in the mall Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because if you don't smile and the picture, and if you don't want to be the entertainer that they saw Saturday night at the club on social media, and they badmouth you and they write about you, and now you are this horrible diva, take pictures, don't look at me, type of a person. So they expect us always remain happy. I don't blame Matlatsma when he said took 46 sleeping tablets. I mean, I slept at 4 this morning working on another production. We hardly sleep, but we're not complaining. It's early night, it's early, late nights, but they expect you to be a machine. When you step off a set, when you step off a stage, you wipe off, you lose the actor's clothes, you become, you go back to your shorts, to your all stars, whatever, you become you. So breathing space. We need people to stand. You need to separate me from what you see on TV, on radio, or on the CD, but also make it so cool, because when you speak of Amy Houses and the Jimi Hendrixes, and they even created a club, Club 27, because they all did great things when they were young, but they all did 27. So it became a thing. Club 27. Oh my gosh, is this 27? Will they make it? Will they make it? So it becomes a race. So now it's a competition with everything that you do, and that our work is in the public eye. So what you do, get up at NetBank or whatever bank, at the my job is not different from any other person's job. It's a 9 to 5, and I get paid per call. So if I'm here or at night, or it's a job. You get hired, you get fired. Do not get high on fame, especially in South Africa. There's no fame, there's no celebrity, there's no hanging out at your gate. Here you can walk freely, easily. As I said, you can laugh hysterically. You can the best person we can be is ourselves. Are we getting support? We're not. I mean, we look at during COVID, majority of the artists for the fundings they didn't get. You look at our minister. I call him the minister of condolences, because that's all he does. And congratulations, oh, Miss South Africa. But they do not, the entertainers that entertained the people, lockdown. So we are not, they can change them around. They don't forget about the art. They've stopped, they stopped thinking, if they've ever thought about prize. But when we do the Lord's Prayer and say our in heaven, we art on earth. So we're here to art for the people. But do they appreciate us? No.
Sihle, I want to then talk to you maybe about South Africa trying to move towards a place where different industries and different spaces do have some kind of mental health institutions or spaces incorporated in those different industries. Is that something that, do you think that that would be some kind of a solution in bridging the gap, or at least trying to respond to some of the mental health issues that happen, whether it's in education, whether it's in entertainment, or just your corporate space? Is that something that, you know, the mental health space should be looking into?
Oh, definitely. I think it'll be a very solid start. But my hope would always be that it doesn't end that way. I think often with things that feel problematic in society, we want solutions that fix it now. And what we don't realize is that there's a very holistic perspective we need to have. The truth is, as a society, we are very anti-mental health. So it can be quite easy for us to say, okay, now we've provided psychologists, so go see someone, because we want to then treat the actual symptoms, but not the cause. So the cause in particularly in South Africa is issues of just inequality, issues of us having to feel pressure to attain things, feel pressure to keep up. So when these things start from birth, start from being in school, what are we prioritizing? What are we telling children to aim for? What are we visually showing to kids as an idealistic life to live? So when we want to talk about intervening at an institutional level in terms of mental health, we need to again remember that mental health is not only about the fact that Sihle at work experienced a trauma at home and now is possibly depressed. He needs to see someone so he can be productive. We need to go beyond that and say, when I employ Sihle at my job, am I creating an environment for Sihle to be emotionally well, socially well, and psychologically well? Did I design it that way? Or am I putting someone who'll fix them when I've pushed them too hard? When I've told them you can't go and see your children, when I've told them you have to work late again, all these things pile up. So what often I think society's response has always been is, if I pay you well, you should just accept it. So we sacrifice our mental well-being with this idea of, well, I'm being paid better. And then sometimes the lure of the money then tells us that if you make a lot, you'll one day be able to stop working and then you can enjoy your life. But life is not something you plan to enjoy in the future. And that's what, again, 2020 showed us, is that so many of the things that we felt we missed is because we didn't take serious. Because if we think about it this way, when last did you see grandmother? I haven't. But now when they say you can't see her, now I need to see her. to get the point. And it's really because we live so much in planning the future. In the future I'll go, in the future I'll do this. Let me make money now and sacrifice my health. When I'm good, I can design the life I want. So we need to think more about, what is a mental health lifestyle look like in the today, in the moment, and we need to design a society that way. So it will begin by having these people in organizations influencing the thinking. So for instance, I'll share quickly here at work. I remember when COVID had started and we did online learning, and then our dates of holidays were starting to be problematic. And I remember telling our principal, and I said, you need to give everyone an earlier holiday. As much as you're convinced that they've been doing online learning and now it's time to get back to class, it was exhausting. Now, teachers will not tell you they're exhausted because peer pressure is real. Who wants to be the first one to say, I know I've been home and teaching from home and being with my family, but it was exhausting teaching and raising my child, who I also had to teach because their school is also online, and feeding my family and being stuck with these people because now I'm here. So give people a holiday early so that they can be productive. But I know that this conversation was difficult for management because now they must explain to their management why you're closing the school early. How are you going to say this when everyone wants to look busy? But mental health is in the design. So we need to think that way. So yes, let's put people in organizations, but organizations must realize it doesn't stop there. These people must influence what is our value system in our space.
Sure. I see that time is almost up for us, but I will ask that those who are tuning in the live stream to just put down their questions. Lulega will be helping me out with the questions. So if you have any questions for our panelists, please do throw them my way and I'll make sure that I do ask our panel. Dean, I'm going to take it back to you in terms of social media again and digital platforms. I then want to ask, because you mentioned that it doesn't help having certain policies in place when they aren't really implemented to their fullest. Would that mean that we sort of rethink how we engage with social media on a personal level? And that means also educating ourselves more about how we actually do engage with social media and digital platforms.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we need to really grasp is that let's say anybody at some stage is able to access a device as they get older, obviously if they can afford it to some degree, or their parents can end up affording it, or they can get a cheaper phone. So what we know there is that people have the device. And then in certain spaces now, people can get connected. That can either be through a SIM card or via Wi-Fi. I mean, even now, the Share It app, as an example, you can file share without any data required. That's inside the technology. Okay, so now we're able to access and start sharing all sorts of things. And then we know that we have around the world, on TikTok, 40% of those 800 million people are teenagers. So what I'm saying is we connected. We have these devices, we have all these platforms, and we need to be able to provide, knowing that actually as a fact, that it doesn't matter what age you are, you get given this device, it connects you to the world. The people that own the devices and own the apps have no care about your mental health. They care about shareholder value. Let's just be really clear on that. That's why they're walking towards being trillion-dollar companies, is that if they were to say, oh, well, we need to be careful about the mental health of people under the age of 18, their revenue would drop off really considerably. So we know as a fact that all that's happening is there's this runaway train, which is wonderful and incredible, but there is no map or no guide to be able to navigate it across those different pillars that I said. Privacy, how do we lock up our settings? Cybersecurity, how do we know about what's happening in terms of what the latest scams are? How do we know about protecting our mind health, resilience? How do we say to people, do you know that every single day, let's look back at yesterday, every single day you have ups and downs, good moments and bad moments, but you always bounce back. Check it out. You're so much more resilient than you think. Let's talk about why did that happen? Let's work out what did you perhaps put out there. People chase tens of thousands of followers, and then when they are trolled or flamed or shamed or whatever it is, they're so shocked. But the numbers are against you. I mean, if you have 10,000 followers, you're always going to have some percentage who are going to be jealous of you or fearful of you or they're insecure or whatever it is. That's just numbers. And so we need to prepare people to say, you're cool. Internally, you're cool, you're unique, you're one of 7.5 billion people, but nobody stops long enough in schools because first of all, we have our own education problems. We have problems much bigger in terms of literacy, for example, and maths. I get it. But these days, in many ways, what I feel is this provides an opportunity to people that don't get a good education. Do you know that? Like we have people that can take photographs of things in their local environment, in their community, in their church. We've got kids that can make these videos. We've got kids that can dance, that can play soccer. So even if your school is sucking, there's still an opportunity to use this well, to be able to create a creative outlet, to be able to connect with people, but somebody needs to teach them how. And I think that's what's really important is, I often say, life online is a labyrinth, but nobody ever gave us a map. Nobody is holding our hand in the darkness. And like this afternoon at 4:30, I am teaching a bank. And that is adults. And essentially, I'm teaching the same stuff. It's just more about reputation. But it's still about mind health. They're still suffering from the same things. They're still making dumb ass mistakes. To be honest with you about phone and falling for phishing scams. Just very quickly, here's a story. 15-year-old 2 Sundays ago, I get called by the father. The father says, I am live online with a extortion. Okay? The son, who was 15, had been on, listen to this, just Google Hangouts, just the chat function, Google, taken his clothes off, completely naked. The person on the other side said, please send me $500. Okay? The father's live online. He knows about us because we're in the press quite a lot. And he said, okay, what do I do? And we guided him through it because even though it looks like sextortion, it's actually extortion. Take the S off. Okay? Yes, sometimes there is sextortion, but sextortion in certain hands is just extortion. They know how to prey on fear. Okay? And so what happens is you've got to show no fear. And you've got to say, I'm going to cut you off now, and I'm not scared of you. And you have to roll the dice. Because even if you pay them, what happens is that they may still re-extort you about 3 months later. But you have to do a whole load of other things. You have to take photographs of what the evidence is. You have to try and see if you can try and track some of the details. You've got to make sure you get all the evidence. Who's teaching you about the fact that there's these extortion scams out there? These are often in India, they're in Eastern Europe. They are with a group of people sitting in a room or in different units in different places who have scripts, who psychologically profile and they know what to say, drop the hook in the water, see who bites. And these are our 14, 15-year-olds taking their clothes off, suddenly, absolutely, to Sicily, they'd be going to Sicily going, I am absolutely petrified. I'm completely exposed here. I'm exposed physically and I'm exposed mentally and in terms of my identity. And I get these stories, no jokes, every week in all these different angles: privacy, security, sexuality, mental health. It's crazy. And so we need to help our kids.
I do have a question from one of our viewers. I think it's probably more relevant to CK or you, Dean. The question is from Dumi, from Head of Programs at BASA. So she's asking, what practical and sustainable tools, rituals can we put in place to normalize care?
So I would always first say whoever's the leader, they need to model it. So there's a cool saying I always hear that, leaders lead in vulnerability. So when we talk about care, it's very important to vocalize that I am tired today, I'm not feeling great, or I'm happy today. So give labels to your emotions and express them so that people feel permission to say that. One of the reasons why we struggle to ever be honest to people is that the people we're speaking to sound so perfect, and you're like, wait, so imagine if I now show that I'm the weak one, then it's chai time for me. So things like that. I think creating boundaries with things like devices, things like connecting. So when we're with people, it would be at home, just being very clear about when do we get off and when do we come back on, things like that. And I think also just being able to be more open when that a trauma has happened to us. So I think within Black families, one of the problems is always we instinctively tell people it's going to be fine. We don't like that little window of not being fine. And the more we are able to open that window and say, I'm not fine, and show it, we are teaching younger people that there is a thing of emotional regulation where we express so that your society can help you. So we can't help you if we don't know, but we won't know if we don't show it. So that I will just almost say it in that way and give others a chance to give their tip.
Sure. I have a question for both of Mahlatsi and Zola. So this one is, just give me a sec. Any advice for creatives in ensuring that mental health does not have a negative impact on their work?
Excuse me, sorry, can you repeat the question again?
So they're asking if you have any advice for creatives in ensuring that mental health does not have a negative impact on their work. So how do they make sure that them feeling down and sad does not necessarily reflect on the work that they're doing?
I think Zola, just take this one.
It's very simple. Be true to yourself. Be kind to yourself. You'll get more work. Allow yourself to lose work, but take care of self, because without this vessel, there is no you. This is all you have. Whether it's your voice, it's your limbs, whether it's whatever that you need to take care of that self, put that first. Jobs, we can, it's like crushing a car. We can replace, never replace life. Always the key of life. So don't, it's not even a comparison. Don't take your health seriously and talk. If you're not okay, say you're okay. We meet each other every day. Hi, how are you? I'm fine. I'm fine. Sometimes you're not fine. It's okay to say I am fine. So self first, work later. Because when you die, they replace you before your body is even rotten.
Sure.
So live your
And
life.
Dean, lastly, before we end our discussion, maybe just going forward, if you could just share some tips on both, teenagers and older people and, young adults in just how to navigate the digital platforms and social media platforms.
Easiest way is probably say with a couple of different analogies. I think we need to realize that this is a very massive sea out there of information, of data, of people. 7.5 billion people in the world, 4.5 billion online, 4 billion on mobile devices. So we're going through these windows and out into this massive world. And we need to realize that some people of those 4 billion with smartphones are dropping hooks in the water and hoping that you'll bite. We're seeing it in gaming, we're seeing it in social media, we're seeing it in clickbait, we're seeing it on websites. People are dropping hooks. What I mean is, these big kind of bold things, Richard Branson has died, or this person has died, or check out this girl or this lady and look at the pictures of her, and we click on it, and what happens is people are trying to take you through different doorways. Oh, now I've got their email address. I think they're quite gullible, so they have a system which tries to pull you through. They're checking to see, they're profiling you to see how gullible you are and what information they can get from you. So it will start with your name and your details, but then hopefully it will either be a password or a credit card. Understand that there are hooks in the water and there are sharks out there. Okay, that's really important. The second one is, to use a different analogy for anybody, is this device essentially is like your digital house. Now, for some people, they lock their doors and windows and they put an alarm on, and it's up to us. The problem is we all have choice, okay? If we don't exercise the choice, then what happens is we have to go, that was me. And that's a sad thing for kids, is that nobody really teaches them enough about choice and then how to choose again, because of course they're going to make kind of dumb mistakes because they're just kids, right? But we've got to try and teach them to not make it again. So if we try and talk about this, we need to understand this is a digital house. And we need to lock our doors and windows. And how we do that is we do something very, very simple. We just go to the settings cog and we go click on settings and we go down to privacy. And inside privacy, we shut down the things that we don't want people to access about us. Then we do that inside TikTok. We do it inside Snap. We do it inside Twitter. We do it inside wherever. And then we have to be careful what posters we put up outside our house for the people that are walking past the window. Those are the words, the images, and the videos. Because what you put out there to this massive base of people, so once you push it out there and people start walking past your house and looking at your windows, they go, okay, so that's who that person is. Okay, well, I've got a response to that. And then you have to be responsible. This is the sad thing, is there's such a huge amount of responsibility on everyone's shoulders because you are a publisher. You're not just an artist. You're not just a musician or a brilliant actor. Like, you guys are amazing. But now you're also a publisher. Okay, and everybody's got an extra opinion about your art, your music, your whatever. And so be careful about these things. The hooks that are in the water, the doors and windows of your house, they are all your choices.
Thank you so much, Dean, and thank you to the rest of the panelists. I think it was quite an insightful and quite a heavy conversation, I will say. And thank you to those of you who have, been live streaming and joined us in this conversation. But then again, thank you to our panelists, and have a brilliant afternoon going forward. From my side and Digify Africa, it's a big thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.